I patrolled the outskirts of the building I'd been sent to protect. My matriarch has ordered me here as my next guard station, along with another of my species who was sent directly by Advent, so probably a clone in that case. I've been on these patrols for a large majority of my time on this planet, the one its inhabitants affectionately call Earth. I was and had always been a guard, but I've never had to raise my weapon before. Except in training, of course, but while I'd have called myself a guard, Advent has a different name for it. Peacekeepers, we were called, I think largely to gain the support of the human populace here. I held my beam rifle across my body, pointing it downwards towards the ground slightly, as we were instructed, as to provide little fear to the humans. The building I was going around looked quite small and discreet, the walls painted a bland white on the outside, with unremarkable wooden doors providing 2 entrances. Otherwise, it opened into 2 small rooms, one filled with chairs and a table, and the second containing the reason we were patrolling here. A large transmitter that acted to transfer vast quantities of information across Advent. I was told briefly that it was located here due to the main facility for the information transfer being destroyed by a terrorist cell. But there was no way that they would know to come here. As with every other patrol job I had been sent on before, I was just going to be patrolling around the building for 4 weeks straight, telling more curious humans to stay back before they rotated the guards again. As far as I could tell, it was only me, the other Viper, and 4 troopers, 2 assigned to each of us, that were guarding the building. Mindless drones, all 5 of them. As I rounded the next corner, I saw 2 humans walking up rapidly to the building. I quickly darted in between them and the building, making sure to keep my rifle down, as I spoke to them in their own language. English, they called it, despite the fact that they were humans and living on a continent they called America. By the laws of their language, surely that would make their language they spoke American? I never understood. Regardless, I always found it hard to adapt to their speech, but I was gradually getting better, only having to pause occasionally to pronounce some words correctly. That, and to remember not to roll my S's, as was typical stereotype for my species. Keep your distance. This building is protected by Advent, I hissed gently at them, as I reached my height, trying to adjust how much of my tail I was resting on, so as not to tower completely above them. A technique that put them slightly less on edge than when I didn't attempt to be gentle with them. In my experience, how fragile. Sorry, we were just trying to have a quick look inside the window, the smaller male responded, raising both hands in front of him. I still had to learn all the gestures they made. I dropped my rifle to my side in one hand, as I raised my other in the air in a similar fashion to how I had seen the speaker address everyone on the media broadcasts. Civilians are restricted to enter the enclosed area of this building, as well as the immediate surrounding area. I motioned towards the concrete standings that surrounded the building they were about to cross. They proceeded to look at each other briefly, but did not head off in any other direction. "So what's in there? Are you allowed to tell us?" the larger male asked, his voice a bit lower than the smaller male beside him. I couldn't help but notice that the smaller male was constantly glancing down away from my eyes. I had been told previously in conversation I was having with a female of their species that it was because of a human part of our bodies. A side effect of having a small amount of human DNA genetically implanted in our species. It gave us a bigger body size and increased strength, as well as a couple other advantages, as my matriarch put it. "No, I am not obliged to," I responded to the first. "If you want more information, I would suggest contacting your local governor." Before turning to the second, "Can I help you, sir?" I asked dryly, as he snapped his eyes back up to me. No, sorry, I didn't mean to," he defended himself immediately. I couldn't help but snicker silently. Inwardly, of course. It's just, I haven't really seen many vipers before, and not one so close, he splutters. Would it be possible to take a picture? He whipped out a small device that I knew as a phone from his pocket, tapping furiously on it. I hesitated for a second, unsure of what to say. I glanced towards the 2 troopers with me. Both stood there holding their weapons in silence. Drones. I turned back towards the human, returning to holding my plasma rifle in both hands across my body. Of course, but only one, I hissed, raising myself back to my normal height as he levelled his phone at me. For a brief moment, a small white light emitted from the top of the phone, then flashed again, indicating the photo had been taken. As soon as he turned to look at his phone, I started retracting towards my previous lower height, when I heard a sharp whiz past my head, as the wall behind me made a snapping noise under the pressure of something. I looked back towards the wall, a singular bullet now lodged in it. A terrorist attack. The 2 troopers I was with immediately dashed for cover, as more shots rang out from in front of me, downing one of them immediately. Get down! I hissed towards the two civilians in front of me, their mouths open, as I pushed them behind one of the concrete standings, taking cover myself behind the base of a lamppost, as I peeked out to observe what was happening. I spotted 5 humans in civilian gear, wielding weapons, one sniping at longer range, while the other 4 advanced through the alley towards my building. Thankfully, not the rumoured XCOM personnel, but rather 5 people dressed in civilian gear with no armour, so probably normal resistance members. I poked my beam rifle around the corner, shooting at the closest human who was hiding behind a crate. The shot connected, sending the human sprawling backwards as she cried out. Target eliminated, I relayed to the other trooper, hiding back behind my cover. I saw the second squad surrounding the building now to assist us. As I began to turn around, I saw a small projectile flying through the air past me. Grenade! I called out quickly, as it rolled towards the squad coming around the corner, coming just to a rest before the wall. The other Viper darted out of the way. Her 2 troopers took the blast, lifeless on the floor. The grenade also destroyed the wall, revealing the transmitter. Elders. Damn it! Now I'd have to deal with those 2 civilians too. I turned around to see them, one frightened and still cowering behind the cover, the other raising his phone to take pictures of me, and now the transmitter. I quickly used my tongue to take away the phone from his hands, dropping it on the floor next to me. I saw a look of protest on his face before he returned to behind his cover. I reached around the lamppost, shooting my tongue out towards the one that had climbed on the roof, grappling him towards me, and I quickly wrapped him up within my coil, tightening my grip until I saw him grasping for air. I could feel his bones between my scales as I crushed him, a superior sense of touch also granted to us by our gene mixing. The second Viper took up a more advanced position, firing at the soldiers, taking a third out. Return fire came from their position, some of their bullets whizzing past me, but I saw my sister take some of the bullets. Recoiling under their effects, green blood oozing from between the scales in her sides, indicating she had been shot. Her herds quivered erratically, but she maintained her composure regardless. She kept low to the floor, winding in on her own tail to reduce her own height. The bullets had struck her sides, missing the limited armour that Advent had gave us. It only covered our chest, and it didn't even go much lower than that. But it did help us maintain our flexibility. On the back, our armour had a small line of protection from the tip of our hood to the main piece, and extended back down our back further, providing us, arguably, with more protection than from our back than from our front. I was a harder target for them to hit, as they had less of me to aim for. They certainly weren't going to aim at the human in my grasp, who was still trying to struggle away from it. I was still partially behind the lamppost base, providing me enough cover. "They are flanking me!" the Viper called out as a human ran at her, slicing her in half with his sword, before running directly at me. The trooper next to me peeked out of his cover, shooting down the approaching human, waving the sword before a single bullet cracked through his helmet. A sniper. I was enough behind the lamppost that the full cover was giving me enough protection from the sniper. He would have to reposition to get a good shot at me. I waited for a couple of seconds longer as the human in my grasp stopped struggling. I released him as he lay down on the floor, his chest starting to move very shallowly, indicating he was still alive, just unconscious. I peeked my head around the cover, hearing another crack as the bullet flew past me again, hitting the desk in the room behind. I took my chance to look around the cover, taking a shot at him with my beam rifle, as the insurgent fell as my shot connected with his chest. I scanned the area for any more hostiles, seeing none as I headed back inside towards the transmitter room, keeping an eye on the two humans as I motioned for them to stay. Inside the transmitter room there was a radio, crackling as a voice tried to get through. I picked up the receiving end, speaking immediately into it. "This is Unit 192-01648. 5 hostiles identified and neutralized, one of which held captive. Requesting reinforcements and a transport to pick up the captive, and 2 civilians needing a medical check for possible trauma. Lockdown of larger area required, due to exposure of transmitter." I spoke into the radio as I heard a voice respond back to me. "Affirmative. ETA 5 minutes. The radio responded as I hung up the receiving end, heading back over towards the civilians. My heart was beating heavy beneath my chest, and I still felt on edge, but entirely alive. I'd never fired my weapon at someone else before, and I still felt equally terrified and exhilarated. I took my cover again behind the lamppost, scanning for any more hostiles, as the 2 humans sat on the concrete standings started talking to me. "That was terrifying," the larger male spoke, his voice trembling slightly. "Are you kidding me? That was awesome," the smaller male called out. "She saved us, man." He headed over towards me, extending one of his arms. I believe it was a gesture they called a handshake. I offered my hand back to him as he gripped my hands quite lightly and shook it. "Thank you ever so much." He smiled at me. I stifled a smile back, but instead nodded towards him. Another human gesture I had picked up. It was usually a placeholder for confirmation, but could also be used as an acknowledgement. It was a little strange to me, still, how one gesture could be translated in different ways to them. "It is my duty and my pleasure," I responded, releasing my hand from his. The taller male also chimed in expressing his thanks to me, to which I again nodded to acknowledge. The smaller one went over to pick up his phone, again tapping quickly on it, before quickly holding it up to me. "Look, I got some great photos of you. I mean, before you stole my phone from me." He smiled, as I narrowed my eyes to look at the phone photos he was showing me. Of me in cover, firing my beam rifle at the enemy, and another of me behind the cover completely. I admit, the small narcissistic side of me enjoyed those photos, particularly how the light reflected off of my amber scales and made them look more golden. But they weren't supposed to be held by the public. I mean, I suppose it's not my problem now, but the troopers' problem once they come to collect them. "I hope you enjoy those photos," I hissed at him. "As you have heard, I have reported the both of you to our medical professionals. It should just be a precautionary check to make sure neither of you are suffering any side effects of having witnessed the battle. I'm sure it will take about 10 minutes once you arrive," I assured, seeing slightly the annoyed faces of both of them. I'm sure they didn't want to be airlifted to some centre when they had other plans, but it was not of my concern. I watched as the 3 transports touched down nearby, several troopers, captains and sectoids filtering out from the ships. The captains immediately ordered the troopers around in their funny language, as the troopers picked up the bodies of both terrorists and our allies, putting them onto the ship. Before they came over to take the alive human, I heard the very faint sound of a voice coming from him. I leaned down to his throat, but realised it was not him, but a small, white device I caught a glimpse of in his ear. I carefully removed it, putting it up to the side of my head so I could hear.
Johnson, come in, repeat. Johnson, status.
The call came in. My eyes widened with the realisation. They have been communicating with another, which means that there is going to be a second attack here, possibly, except for this time, XCOM might get involved. If they had caught a sight of transmitter, which is entirely possible now with a big gaping hole in the wall. Johnson is dead, I whispered into the small white device, which immediately buzzed back with, "Fuck, turn it off!" As the voices were replaced with a dull white noise, they had turned it off. And there weren't going to be any rescue attempts for the lost operative, at least if they thought he was dead. I expected there would be a battle again tomorrow, seeing as we had a large important bundle of information due to be transmitted at that point. So XCOM would attack then, if they were going to attack at all. We would have to secure a larger perimeter anyway to get the public to avoid looking at the transmitter device. But I had a very bad feeling about what was going to happen tomorrow.